Boker Tov. Today's Daf Yomi is Nedarim Daf Chaf, Nedarim 20. Today's Daf Yomi start with the Mishnah on the top of Chaf Amid Aleph. The Mishnah says, Nadar b'cherem. A person takes a vow. He says, as the Mefarish explained, he says, this object is cherem alai. This object is cherem, and we had seen that the word cherem could be a reference to something being donated to the temple, or it could be referenced as a gift to the Kohen. And we had said in the previous Mishnah that if you're not sure, you say Stam Nedarim Lahachmir, that we're going to be strict and assume it was a vow to the temple, and therefore it's a valid vow that you're accepting upon yourself. But then we had said in the previous Mishnah, Pirusham Lahakel, when it comes to explain the vow, we could be lenient. So in this case also, the person who made the vow says, Lona darti ela b'charmo shalyam. He said, yeah, I said by the cherem, but I meant by a fisherman's net, because cherem could also be a fisherman's net. Or if a person says, korban alai, if he says, this object is like a sacrificial offering upon me, and then, or like a korban upon me. So Amar, and then he says, Lona darti ela b'korbanot shamalachim, and he says, oh, I only intended it to be not like a sacrifice in the temple, but like the sacrifice, like an offering to a king. So, or if he says, Hare Atzmi Karban, he says, I myself am like a carbon, i.e., it implies that he consecrated himself. And then he says, no, you thought I was saying Hare Atzmi B'Karban, but really what I was saying is, I left a bone in my home, an etzem in my home, and that's what I was taking a vow by. So it was nothing, meaningless. Or if a person says, Konim Ishti Nanisli, he says, my wife is prohibited to have benefit from me. But then he says, when I said Ishti, when I said my wife, I didn't mean my current wife. He says, I meant my previous wife, who I divorced a while ago. For all these people, he doesn't even need to go to the Chacham in all these cases and all these vows. He doesn't even need to go to the sage to have it annulled. It's already considered annulled. He doesn't even need She'ela, because for sure it's permitted, since we're going to say that that was his intent when he was making these vows. But now is where our Mishnah, which I've up until now been very clear, now starts getting a little more challenging to understand. If he does go, Onshin Osan, Umachmir and then we're strict upon them and we punish them. We punish them and we're strict upon them. So we don't know what that means. Gemara is going to explain it. That's the position of Rabbi Meir. So the Chachamim say, again, there's a difficult line. And the Mefarish says it means that we allow them to even have regret, meaning to say just as long as they regret it, and then we rebuke them that they should not be flippant with vows. And we teach them so that they're not flippant with the vows. We don't know what this last part of the Mishnah means, so the Gemara is going to take up this discussion. The Gemara says, Hagufa Kasha, the Mishnah is internally contradictory. Amris, the Mishnah said, Ein Nishon Lahen. The Mishnah said, you don't even need to ask about these vows, they're automatically null and void. The Hadar Tani, but then the Mishnah said, Im Nishalu. But then the Mishnah said, if they are in the shallow, that if they ask about them, if they try to annul them, we punish them and we're strict upon them. Which is it? So Amar Yehuda, this is what our Mishnah means. All these cases, you don't even need to go to the Chacham to annul the vow. When is that the case? By a Torah scholar, by a Torah scholar of Amma Aretz Shebo Ishal. But if a person would be an Amma Aretz, what's an Amma Aretz? Amma Aretz is a category, a class of people who don't have respect for the sages. One of the definitions of an Amma Aretz is someone who doesn't have a Rebbe. doesn't have respect for the tradition. We punish him, and we're stringent upon him. So the Gemara says, well, we understand Bishlama, we understand what does it mean machmirin, what does it mean we're strict. Means we don't allow him to annul the vow simply by saying I regret. One of the ways you can annul a vow is say I regret having made it. But in that case, we're not going to work because since he was an Am Aretz, we want to teach him not to make such vows. Now, what's the case in which we punish him? Okay, so how do we punish him? So the Gemara says like the Brisa, Misha Nazar. So let's say somebody took a vow to become a Nazir, right? And then he violates his Nazirus. And we don't listen to him to annul his vow until he observes at least those minimum of the days in which he had ignored the vow and he acted like he wasn't a Nazirite. Means to say if somebody took a vow for Nazirite and then he just ignored it and he was drinking the wine and getting haircuts every day and he did this for a while, we're not going to annul his vow until he at least obeys those number of days as a Nazirite. That's the position of Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yossi said, Rabbi Yossi said, when do we say this? I'll tell you when we say this, B'Nazirus Mu'ates, only by a Nazirus Mu'ates. What's a Nazirus Mu'ates? Where a Nazirite of 30 days. Although Nazirus Merubah, but if it would be a Nazirite that was longer, Dayo Lamayom, it will be enough to observe the 30 days. And once he observes the 30 days, then we're going to allow him to annul the vow. Amar Rav Yosef, Hov Amar Rabbanim Ein Niskakalo. So Rav Yosef says, since the rabbis had said we don't pay any attention and we don't annul his vow, since that's the case, Beidina de Mistaki to Mr. Kaki, if the court would annul his vow, go of it shapir. They've acted improperly. And more than that, if the court would annul his vow, then we would excommunicate the court. That's the position of the Rad. But the Meiri brings down some who say differently. The Meiri says that what it means is that when we excommunicate him, what it means is we excommunicate the person who didn't obey his laws of Nazirus. And then afterwards, he didn't want to obey them properly, like the days that he was supposed to. He didn't want to take upon himself those days. Not that we excommunicate the court. And so that's how the Meiri learns the Gemara differently. Okay, so now the Gemara says, Some say we no, indeed, we reject it from another place. We reject the vow. Tana, so the Gemara says, a Brisa. You should not be accustomed to make vows. Because if you're going to make a vow and you're going to violate the vow, in the end, not only what's going to happen is you're going to violate the oaths. And oaths are even more severe than vows, because by oaths it says, you'll never, we saw this recently in the daf, you'll never achieve, even when you get lashes, you don't achieve atonement. But so oaths are more severe. And so therefore, if you make oaths, in the end, you're going to even violate violate vows, you're going to violate the more severe penalty of oaths. Oaths is said in the Aseres HaDibros. And also, Alti regulates Amaretz. Don't be accustomed to be with an Amaretz, because what's an Amaretz? Amaretz is really, and throughout the Talmud, it's someone who's not careful about tithing. And what's going to happen is just in the end, he's going to give you food that's not tithed. He regulates a Kohen Amaretz. Don't be with a Kohen Amaretz. So in the end, he's going to give you truma. He gets truma to eat. He's not going to be careful. He's going to give it to you. One version of the Gemara is truma to meya. He's going to give you truma that's itself prohibited to eat, even for a kohen. Don't accustom to have conversations with a woman. It means unessential conversations. don't have the conversations that are not necessary to be, and including necessary is mean to be a good human being. If a woman comes over and says something, you shouldn't say, "Oh, I'm not allowed to talk," but it means you shouldn't be a flirt, because in the end, that's going to cause you to be sinful in this area. Rabbi Yoshaya Omer, Koat Sofa Ben Hashem, Sofa Bali De Avera. Rabbi Yoshaya says, whoever gazes at woman, in the end is going to come to sin. And whoever gazes at the heel of a woman, in the end he's going to have children that are not appropriate children. Amar Rav Yosef, that's referring even to his wife when she's in her state of her nida. That the state, when a woman is in her state of her nida, even when your wife is in the state of the nida, you're not allowed to gaze at her. And the reason why we say that is because other women, then you're never allowed to gaze at them. As it says in the Gemara in Avodah Zarah, it says in the pasuk in Deuteronomy 23, that a person a person is not allowed to gaze at a woman who's not his wife. So here it means that even when your own wife, when she's in nida, you're not allowed to gaze at her. So Amar Rabbi Shimon Lakish, Akeva de Katani, when it says you're not allowed to gaze at the heel of a woman, that's b'makom atinofes. That's talking about actually not the literal heel, but it's talking about the genitalia area, because that's corresponding to the heel. It's right above the heel. Tanya, it says in the Brisa, it says by Sinai, by the Ten Commandments, it says that Hashem says to Moshe, don't be afraid. The reason why I've tested you is that so that you shall be in awe of God. When it says so that you don't sin, what is this a reference to? Zubusha. This refers to that you should be filled with shame, bashful, so that you don't sin. If you're bashful, that causes you to have fear of sin. From here, the rabbis taught, it's a very good quality in a person that he is bashful. A person who is bashful will not quickly sin. And if somebody does not have this quality of bashfulness, then it's a sign that his ancestors were not standing at Mount Sinai. Amar Rabbi Yochanan ben Dahavai. So Rabbi Yochanan ben Dahavai taught, and off the top of my head, I don't remember where else in the Shas Rabbi Yochanan ben Dahavai appears. So he's not often quoted on Mora. So Rabbi Yochanan ben Dahavai taught the ministering angels. They told me four things. One was Chigarin. Why is somebody lame? Because they turn over the tables. This refers to, most commentaries understand this to mean that this refers to bia shalokadarka. They have the intercourse not in the regular position, but in what's called the anal intercourse. We'll call that bia shalokadarka. And because the woman is standing in an unusual manner, therefore her children from that will have to stand with difficulty. That's the way the Rush explains it. So why is somebody mute? Why is somebody unable to speak? Because person uses his mouth and he kisses that place. He kisses the genitalia area. Why is a person going to be deaf? Because they're engaged in conversation during the moments of tashmish. And suman, why is a person blind? Because they gaze at the genitalia area. So the Gemara says, Vira minu, is this really the case? And the Gemara's question is on, how can you say that the punishment happens because you're misaprim, b'shas tashmish, because you're talking during tashmish? But shalas ima shalom. It says that they asked ima shalom. And ima shalom, we know, was the wife of Rebbe Lezer Agadol, but it doesn't say who's they. It doesn't say who's they who asked her. So So they asked the wife of Rabbi Elazar. And they asked her, they asked Rabbi Eliezer's wife, on the top of Chafam Abayz. Why are your children so handsome? And so she responded to them, my husband, when he's with me, when he's mishamish with me, he's not with me at the beginning of the night or the end of the night. What's the problem with the beginning of the night or the end of the night? Because that's when people are still women are walking in the marketplace. And so therefore the concern is that her husband would have been thinking about other women. Just in the middle of the night when I'm the only one there. And when he engages in tashmish with me, they're using a euphemism. When he is misaper, megala tefach mechasa tefach, it's very modest. He only uncovers a little bit and covers up a little bit. We earlier learned in the Gemara that in Ksuvos also it appears in Yevamos. Talmidei Chachamim are only mishamshim b'layla, they're only mishamish at night or in a dark room. But this was on top of that. Even in the dark room, he only uncovered a little bit or covered up a little. The dome alav kamisha kafo shade, and it seemed to, and when he was engaged in the tashmish, he was. The Ran writes and the Rav and Bali Nefesh writes that he acted as very quickly, as though a demon was forcing him to do this. However, the Rav in the Bali Nefesh, which is his treatise on marital relations, the Rav writes in the name of some commentaries. That means he acted as though he was forced and he didn't do anything for his own benefit. Another explanation that the Ravid gives is that he did this action like a person who was afraid of a demon. So however, the Ramban, in his great treatise called the Geras HaKodesh, his treatise on marital intimacy, he writes that what it means is that he didn't act only for his own benefit, but he was acting as though he was doing something that he was doing because of the mitzvah of Ona, that a person is obligated from the Torah to provide his wife with Ona. Ona means time. He's supposed to give her time, pleasure, or other uses of his time. And so that's what the Ramban's saying, that he was doing this as though he was commanded to do it, but not for his own benefit. And that's also what the Mefarish writes here, that he was doing this as though a demon was forcing him to act in this manner. So alternatively, the Mefarish gives another explanation that he was mishamish when he was covering her up, like a person who's afraid that a demon is going to come and expose him. So Gamartilo, and so I said to him, Matam, and so I said to him, why are you mishamish so quickly? That's what Imam Shalom said to Rabbi Eliezer, her husband. Why are you mishamish so quickly? So he said, Kadeshol etenes einai be'isha acheres. V'nimtu banav banu de mamzeres. He said, because I don't want to think about another woman during the time of Tashrish, and as a result of this, our children will be considered like there's a little bit of mamzeres associated with them, because it's because as the Rosh writes, whoever is mishamish with his wife, but he's thinking about another woman, it's as though he did the action with the other woman, and then the children have a pagam, they have a blemish as though they're mamzers. So that's how the Rosh explains it. So alternatively, the Tosfos Yeshanim says because he has thinking about another woman, then his children will seem to him like they're from another woman. It's like they're mamzerim because they're not going to be like his wife. So the Igeras HaKodesh to the Ramban says that if you have the proper intent, the children will be God-fearing. So anyway, we see from here that she was speaking to her husband during Tashmish, and he was speaking. So didn't we say that this was something to be avoided? So the Gemara says, it depends if what you're saying is appropriate. If it's relevant, then it's okay. But if it's just regular conversation, that's inappropriate. So I'm Rabbi Yochanan, Zu Divrei Rabbi Yochanan ben Davai says. So Rabbi Yochanan says, yeah, that's the position of Rabbi Yochanan ben Davai. All these things that we said. He said, but the Chacham said the law is not like Yochanan ben Davai. Means say Yochanan ben Davai was reporting the name of the angels, but it's not accurate. It was just his own thing. Really, the law is not like Yochanan ben Davai, and Yochanan ben Davai are given these limitations on how a person can be mishamish with his wife, but really it's not the case. But really, whatever a husband wants to do with his wife, he's allowed to do. Meat that comes from the butcher shop. You want to salt it, you could salt it. Sli, you want to roast it, mavushal, you want to cook it, shlok, you want to boil it, you got to do all these things. And also fish that comes from the fishermen. Just like fish, you eat whichever different ways. So too, a husband and a wife can act in that manner. Amar Ameimar Man Malachi Ashares. So, right, who is Rabbi Yochanan ben Davai talking with? Who are these Malachi Ashares? These are the Rabbanan. These are just rabbis. Ditem Malachi Ashares Mamish. Is if they're actually Malachi Ashares, then Amayam Rabbi Yochanan Malachi Yochanan ben Davai. Then how can Rabbi Yochanan say the law is not like them? He had the angels. So it must be Ha'inu B'ki B'tzir Savlat Fei. The angels know the formations of a baby better than Rabbi Yochanan even. So it must be warring angels. So why were they called Malachi Asharis? Why were they called angels? The Mitzayani Malachi Asharis, because they were separate, they were distinguished like angels. They weren't real angels, but they were separate. They were not regular people. So like it says in the Agad, the Jewish people were distinguished in Egypt. And we also know that the Gemara says that your Rebbe is supposed to be Domo of Kamalach, that your Rebbe is supposed to be somebody who seems to you like an angel that you're studying with. So that's what it means. It means that the Rebbe is sometimes compared to an angel, meaning somebody who inspires awe in you and is not on the same level with you. So now the Gemara tells us, Ahida Asla Kame de Rebbe, there was a woman who came to Rebbe, Amrlo, she said to him, Rebbe, Arachtilo Shochan. She said, Rebbe, I arranged the table, speaking euphemistically, and he overturned it. He wanted to engage in Bia Shalkadarka. She was complaining to Rebbe, or she was tattletelling, or she was trying to say, we have a difference of opinion in our approach. So Amarla, he said to her, Biti Torah itircha v'anima selech. He said, the Torah allows it. There's nothing I can do for you. He's within his marital rights to be able to act like this. There was a woman who came in front of Rav. Amarlo, she said to him, Rabbi, she said, Rabbi, I arranged a table and he overturned it. So he said, he said, well, how is this different from fish? You buy fish in the marketplace, you can do what you want. So too here, husband and wife, your husband has the right. This is the right of the marriage. But what does it say in the pasuk? You're not allowed to go after your heart. Because it says that you're not allowed to go after your heart. So we learn from here that from this pasuk, Rabbi said you're not allowed to drink one cup and think about another cup. Meaning to say, a person is not allowed to be with his wife and at that same moment think about a different woman. Levavchem refers to thoughts of the heart. And what's the problem if he's thinking about another woman? Then, as the Re'im says, cited in the Shita Mekubet, says that he's going to possibly lose his desire for the woman he's with, and that's problematic. Some say that it comes from Levavcha, which implies double bet, mean to say two desires. You're not allowed to follow after two desires. You have to focus your whole desire on the woman that you are on your wife. A man has to focus on the woman he's with. Amar Ravina, so Ravina says, no, this refers to even if a person has two wives, meaning to say that obviously you're not allowed to think about a woman who's not your wife, but even if you are married to two women, which they were allowed to back then, so even then you're not allowed to think about your other wife while you're with the first wife, because this woman is entitled to your full desire and attention. Ubarosi mikam, and it says in the pasuk, God says, I will pluck out from you Hamordim Poshim B. The verse says in Ezekiel, I will pluck out from you those who are rebelling against me and those who are sinful against me. So what does that mean? I'm a Rabbi Levi. What does this mean? Elu b'nei tisha midos. This refers to this refers to children who are created from one of 9 ways of marital relations that have an aspect of sin to them. And so therefore, that's what it means that these are the children of more than Poshim B. That's how the Ran explains it. The Ravid says no, that the person who himself engages in this manner is called a Moredu Poshe, it's called a rebellious person. And it's not that the son is rebellious, the person is rebellious, but he creates these children in this manner. And what are these children of such relations called? B'nei Osnat Mishka'ach. That's the notarikon that we said. Who are these children? These are B'nei Ema, that if the husband places fear upon the wife, or B'nei Anusa, if he forces her, he compels her to have intercourse. So B'nei Ema, he intimidates her, and B'nei Anusa, he forces her. B'nei Senua, he hates her, and yet they engage in intercourse. So the question that the commentaries discuss, the Ravid discusses, what about Leah? It says that Leah was Senua. So the Ravid explains, Leah was not hated by Yaakov. In her own mind, she was hated. Otherwise, we would be saying that half of the Shvatim were the children or the children of this union. No, so Leah was not hated. In her own mind, she thought she was hated, but Yaakov loved her. B'nei Nidoi, the children of somebody who was excommunicated, even though the husband and wife, the wife is supposed to go into excommunication with her husband, they're not allowed to engage in relations. B'nei Temura, the woman of the exchanged one, meaning to say, if a person has 2 wives and he thinks he's with one and he has relations with the other one. Again, the question is, what about Yaakov Avinu? Yaakov thought he was with Rachel and he was with Leah. So no, so there the difference is Yaakov thought he was with Rachel, but he was thinking about Rachel at the time. So that is not a problem. But if he thought he was with Rachel and he was thinking about Leah, that would be a problem. But that's not what he did. B'nai Meriva, hold on one second. B'nai Meriva, the children of if their husband and wife are in a fight at this time, if there's a Meriva between them and they had still not appeased it, that would be problematic. B'nai Shichros, if the husband is in a drunken state, he's in a drunken stupor, and so therefore he doesn't really pay attention to his wife, that's also a problem. B'nai Grusha Salev, if he had intended to divorce her, and yet he just has not divorced her yet. B'nai Yerbuvia, if they intended, or if we don't know if the woman had been with many men, and we don't know exactly who the father is. Or B'nai Chatzufa, or if the woman was a Chatzufa, this means she invited her husband into having the relations. So the Gemara says about this last point, the Aini, is this really the case that the B'nai Chatzufa is so problematic? So any woman whose wife is going to ask him to engage in intercourse, so children they're greater than even the generation of Moses, as it says, that Moses, that Yisro says to Moshe, bring for them. That Moshe had said, he said, bring to be judges, Anashim, Chachamim, V'nevonim, bring wise and people who are of great wisdom, Nevonim, Uksiv, but it says about Yaakov Avinu, Ve'kachas Roshei Shiftechem, and then it states also in Devarim, it says, and Moshe says, when he took these judges, it says, he only took the Roshei Shiftechem, but it doesn't say he took Nevonim, Uksiv Nevonim. And then it says by Yaakov Avinu, Yisachar Chamor Garem, that Yisachar was a Chamor Garem, which means that Yaakov was riding on his donkey, going back to his house before the birth of Yisachar, that the donkey went on its own to the tent of Leah, and then and that meaning say Leah invited him to have relations with her, and it says me Bnei Yisachar Yodei Bino Eitim, that from the children of Yisachar they created Yodei Bina, that they were Bina, meaning to say they were Nevonim. So we see that even though Leah was Tovas Yaakov, the children were Nevonim. So the Gemara says, Ahi de Mirati Artsuye. No, she was Miratim. She spoke nicely to him. That's all it means. She was romantic, flirtatious, but it doesn't mean that she literally said it. She hinted to it. That she and even though it says in Bereshis, it says in the pasuk in Genesis 30, verse 16, Elai Tavo, that's not considered to be like a full invitation, because she's just said, come into my tent. She didn't literally say, she didn't speak in a vulgar manner. Okay, hold on one second. Rabbi Yosef has a question. And obviously, I just want to say before that these are things that we most appropriately to discuss them in one-on-one settings and in very modest manner. So we're just really touching Rashi Tevos of these very, very important topics.
Just